Okay, on to the first pass, and the first thing I'm going to do is group all like shots together. So this first bit's going to be a little bit boring. And I'm just going to go through and I'm going to group all like shots and angles together. I'm just going to go ahead and do that for all the shots. So tell you what, I'm actually going to skip forward and then come back when I've got everything grouped. Right, that's done. So we've now gone ahead, well I've gone ahead and I've put everything in the groups. If you haven't done that, pause this video, go ahead, do that yourself. You know how to do that by now. That's going to make working a lot faster, believe me. So I'm going to make a new stills album. I'm going to call this First Pass. And I'm going to go and I'm going to take stills of all of my LD. Yeah, we probably will come back to that later. It doesn't look great, if I'm honest. But that's fine, that's all part of the process. Cool, so I'm going to come back to the kitchen a little bit later, and I'm going to start here. And I'm going to start by putting my LD look into all of these angles. And that gets us a lot of work done already. Then we'll see. Then we'll see if that works here. And that's looking all right. Let's just check the integrity of this key. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a greeny yellowy thing there. Okay, that's fine. I can live with that yellowy thing being a bit out. Compared to the other one, it's not quite as colourful, so we'll just bring a little bit more out of the background, and it's also a bit bluer. And that skin is probably not quite that colourful here. And I think we might need to bring up the highlights a little bit to match it out as well. We'll balance that with lower mids. Okay, the skin is still a bit pink. And we'll pull it down. Just going to pull that down a little bit so it's not as pink. There we go. That's a much stronger match. Cool. And what we might just do is bring those shadows down a smidge. There we go. So we've now got our first pass on this scene. Dead easy. Then we took all of that time getting that look just so before, so we can expect that. So that's all first pass. Now I'll clear all of these flags as I go along, actually. Let's just go back and take care of this. And that's first pass, that's fine. We'll watch that through later on and give it a double check, but that's looking pretty good for a first pass. So now let's go back to the first one. Let's see if that... And yeah, because obviously that moves up to be part of the wide, so we can just copy paste that directly onto it. And that's fine. So this shot I remember being a little bit more challenging. Clearly my memory's not very good. Let's just watch this through and see if we see any obvious noise. In the upper left up here, I see some flaws in the key. There we go. That's fine. We might actually just bring that up a smidge. We've got a spike in the highlights here. Don't forget, you're always going to have something spiking at the top, this little dusty reading, and that's your watermarking down here, but we can clearly see the practical lights here in that vending machine. So we just need to watch out and make sure that it doesn't lose too much detail. I'm going to bring these up a bit so that the next shot matches up, and then I'm going to use a curve to bring those back down under control. I'm just going to go back to the RGB curve, and I'm just going to bring those highlights down, compress the highlights there, and I can just bring them down. There we go. And that's then solved that little problem there, and that's fine. Let's just watch this through, see if we can spot any issues. Let me just double check the hair in that key. Okay, I thought I could see a little bit of a highlight there, but that's okay. Excellent. Cool, that's that scene to first pass at the very least. We'll go back and we'll make a few little adjustments. Maybe the skin needs a little bit of work, maybe a bit of vignetting, maybe some face vignettes, that kind of thing, but we'll get that sorted in third, second pass. But for first pass, that's actually fine now. So I'm now going to skip ahead. I'm going to come back to the woodlands. I'm now going to skip ahead. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not. Back to our references. Let's do this shot, which has non-existent white balance again. Maybe he was going for a cool look in camera, doesn't matter. Go for a neutral look in camera, then you can make it cool. If you tilt everything one particular way at capture, you're just taking options away later on. So, although a lot of DOPs really don't like people saying that because they want to think that everything is under their direct control, but that's the business, I'm afraid. There are other people in the pipeline. Right, just going to warm this up a little bit, get our neutral colours back. Cool, and then I'm going to bring those highlights up. Those lids down, and then with a curve, I'm just going to bring those clipping highlights in the background back under control. That's cool. I don't want that to be 100% bright because it kind of draws the eye. It's getting into the upper right third as well, so it's not in a great position if we want it not to be distracting. Excellent, cool. Right, so that's a good starting point. Now, going back to all of our different references, can you guess what we're going to do? That's right, we're going to make it desaturated and we're going to add teal. So in this case, okay, I do want the skin to show through a bit more, so let's see how close we get with a skin key. Should not be too bad here, actually. That's probably a bit much. Don't want to introduce a halo. Right. Okay. Clearly some of that coat is blue, which is unfortunate. That's getting a bit better. Let's go closing radius 1. There we go. Still a little bit of green spill on the forehead there. Cool. Now it always looks a bit magenta when we contrast it with green. We're going to make it a little bit more yellow, and then we're just going to bring it down a bit so it fits in a bit more. Tell you what I'm also going to do here. I am going to, because this shot is pretty static and there's some kind of red reflection coming in from the outside, I'm just going to add a garbage matte because it doesn't really move. And I'm just going to garbage matte it out there. Because that shot barely moves, that lets us solve our little masking problem quite easily. And then we've just got to finalize the contrast a little bit more. And there we have our kind of bleak Scandinavian style look going on. Might just make it a little bit blue as opposed to green, actually. Cool. And for first pass, that's okay. It then takes us into the next scene without the next scene looking too different. In fact, tell you what I might actually do, I'll just tone that down a little bit. There we go. Okay, that's fine, but then this one of course goes up there and then that's fine, so that's okay. Cool, excellent. So that's this section here to first pass now. I'll come back to the kitchen later on. Then it's the bathroom. Okay, so this scene was really awkward. Like, you cannot pull a skin key in this scene. I've tried and tried, believe me. So what we have to do now is we have to think about this, and we just have to basically do our best with our primary tools. We're not going to get decent secondaries here. The lighting's very off. It's very diffuse. It's very difficult lighting. So we're looking more at these kind of muted looks with a very kind of singular color cast. More kind of this and this, this. Not so much this with the clean separation between warm and cool. It's more kind of blending in because we're just not going to get a clean separation between the skin and the background here. And that's okay. We have to keep this kind of look in mind. But what we can do is we just have to see what we can do with our primary tools, and that's already getting close, actually. So we just need to make sure that it looks suitably dour and dark and gritty. I might actually put some colour into this. I might just... Problem is, as soon as you do anything in this shot, the skin starts to leave you. Like, the moment you start to put any colour balance in, the skin loses all its colour, and it's you're just not going to get a decent secondary on it. We're going to take down this red shirt here, because it's kind of breaking through the look, and this red lipstick. But when we encounter issues like this, less is more. Okay, I tell you what, we'll put that back up because I'm looking at the wrong part of the wave there, my mistake. Then I'm going to use a wave to bring our highlights down. There we go. That's more like it. And we want to try and preserve the kind of We want to try and preserve the kind of greenish steely teal tint that we've got, and we've got some natural blue in here, but the moment I move anything the skin goes weird, so let's see what we can do with Hue v Hue. Okay, that looks promising. I want to be careful not to turn her shirt green though. Now that's getting a bit of our steely teal look back. I might just want to go back a little bit further. This was the hardest scene to work on when I actually turned this job around. Let's see if I can get anywhere by boosting the saturation. From memory, I didn't think so. No, see? Nothing. Right, well, let's take care of that shirt. Right, that's no longer punching through the look, that's good. Now we're just kind of working against the lighting here. You've got to go with what you've got, but what we've got at the moment is not ideal. So it's really just a case of trying to work with it. That I think is okay. This is definitely not. This needs more work. No, it's not even getting the skin. I mean, according to the keyer, what is the skin? What hue is the skin? And that is what happens if we try and key the skin in this image. If we actually... Yeah, her skin is actually blue. And there's no way refinement tools can plug that hole. So that is not going to happen. So we cannot use the HSL keyer in this scene, and every shot is like this. Okay, that's better. That looks alright, actually. And there's this angle again. I don't know, I'm starting to warm to this, actually. Let's just watch it through. But the scene in the end, in the real job, this scene was a bit of a compromise as well. Lots of very diffuse lighting. There's almost no colour information in the skin to begin with. Like half of her face is almost zero saturation, but blue. So it looks a bit grey. That's all editing together quite nicely. Although the director was really happy with this scene in the end. I didn't think it was the strongest. That's fine, that's a little bit bright. Also, it doesn't need the secondary for the red. Right, let's just go back and check that again. Bit of an interruption there. Okay, fine, that edits together quite well. The rest of this should be fairly simple copy and paste. This one's a bit bluer. I don't think we need the secondary there. I'll just add a touch of green. Okay, I just added a little bit to the shadows here, brought them down a second. Okay, so that's that scene to first pass. This is going quite quickly. Mind you, we put a lot of groundwork in before, and two-handers like this are quite easy to grade once you've gotten a good look down. So next is the wood, and the more I think about this, the more I'm definitely going to do the wood look again. I don't think that's very good at all. So, I'm going to keep that there, just in case. You never truly delete anything you've done, just in case you want it again. And as soon as you delete that, you'll want to go back and use it. Believe me, that's how it works. So I'm actually going to go for this scene next. Now, I like these kinds of looks. That might be a bit extreme. We'll see if we can get something a little bit closer to that. This is meant to be nighttime, so it's defined by very warm, very kind of tungsten lighting. We accept that things look quite cool and neutral during the day, and at night, because of tungsten lights, things look very warm and artificial. So we can try and go for that as well. But first we'll do our basic primary. Just get it in a good place. Lo and behold, it's purple again. Okay. Just warming it up. We want to make sure it doesn't look artificially too warm. That's my phone again. I should probably put it on silent when I'm recording these. But busy day, and I'm recording this in between Christmas and New Year, so... Okay, so we'll just ground our shadows a little bit. So this is a decent starting point. I'm just going to save my work, because Resolve can crash. So, let's see how close we can get to it. The first thing I'm going to want to do is take care of these coloured stripes on the mother's top. You don't really want it to interfere with the skin. We're just going to bring those down a bit because they can interfere. These blue might interfere with what we're about to do, but we'll see how that goes. So let's take a look. Right, now this is another skin key, because if we were to make everything this artificially warm, the skin would look hilarious. So if I grabbed hold of this and I just made it so that I got that kind of yellow, you can already see that the skin looks completely absurd. So we need to pull a skin key if we're going to do that. I'm not really in the mood to make a hell of a lot more work for myself. So let's just see what we can do. We definitely want to give that kind of contrast ratio, that kind of contrast distribution. And we do that by lowering the mids and raising the highlights. We're retaining most but not all of the shadow details. We've lost a little bit in the creases of the tie. That's not particularly important details. That's fine and it adds to the look. But the front of the tie is all here. The face is all here. There's even, in the right hand side of the room, there's even detail over there as well. And as we bring things down, we also have to decrease the saturation somewhat as well. Cool. Okay, so now we're going to want to make a warm tint, and we're not going to go full-blown yellow like this. Maybe something a bit more like this. Let's just bring the saturation back a little bit as well. And we might just... There we are. Right. So let's see how far we get with the skin key, because I suspect it's not really going to work. Nah, I didn't think so. So, in that case, what we can do... And we're going to undo our skin key. And then we've got an evening look. That looks like it's the evening. It looks like the only light source here is that practical light. It's not a dead ringer for this look, but given these circumstances, it's not going to be. But we can just kind of take that kind of style, and this is when you're working from a reference, you're not always going to recreate the reference perfectly when you're doing this. It's more of a kind of informing the direction in which you work. And because we've got a little bit of odd blue in the pants there, I'm going to use a Luma V saturation curve. I'm just going to bring that down a bit as well, so we don't get any problematic colours in the shadows. Cool, and that's now looking like quite a convincing kind of nighttime, late evening nighttime. So we can see how well this works, and that does work quite well. These are just close-ups under identical lighting conditions. We'd expect them to work quite well. So what I will do, I will take a still of this, and then I will just copy-paste it into there. In fact, I will then put that into pre-clip there as well. Then we'll see how well that works. Okay, this side not so much. This side needs some work. It just needs to have the shadows brought up because the mother's head is getting a bit lost. We'll just raise those mids. We'll bring some of that shadow back as well. So those two, great. That might be a little bit bright and saturated here. That's more like it, so let's just watch these through and see how they cut together. So that's this sequence pretty much to first pass. We'll come back later on and watch it through and give it a check, but I'm pretty happy with that for the time being. And this is beginning to take shape. There are two major scenes we have yet to deal with, and that's the woods, which we'll come back to. We've got to do the kitchen as well. But the woods, and then the exam, and then finally the interrogation scene as well. Right, I'll just save before moving on. So this is also a day for night. We could repurpose our look, make sure it's not too crazy. I kind of like that when we turn it off it goes quite green. I like that because it does kind of sell the whole cold night versus warm artificial light thing. So I'm actually okay with that happening, and also it's a strong cut from one to the next. I'm just going to bring the shadows down a smidge. Cool. So I'm quite happy with that. Okay, so here this needs some noise reduction, and if we copy paste it's not going to work. That looks like some kind of noir flashback. So we're going to need to do this from scratch. It's quite a simple shot. There's not a great deal we can really do with it. We just need to make sure that we do sell the kind of aggressive tungsten look. We get a lot of noise in the shadows, so what we're going to do, and we need to remove that green, so we're just going to bring the shadow saturation down. We want to avoid it looking like charcoal. If you bring it down too much, you get a kind of weird charcoal effect. We'll just dial that in. And if we go back to our references, we've got this kind of look here, and we're getting quite close. I think I might just add a little bit of blue in those shadows. And now we're going to have to add some denoising. So about denoise of 8 should do it. And tell you what we'll do a 2-frame blend of temporal as well. And we'll just play that back to check it. It might be a little bit soft. We'll just dial back the spatial to about 4.5. There we go. We just want to de-emphasize the noise. We don't want it to be super smooth. Noise reduction is great, but it can kind of smooth over important detail, and it's always a balance. When you have to use noise reduction, you're going to smooth things out. It's always a balance as to how bad is the noise, how bad is the smoothing. You strike a balance between it. So okay, so now that's going to work. So these two are the same angle. Tell you what, let's get this looking good first. We want to kind of sell that warm light feeling. Okay, we're going to have to keyframe this. To do that, we're going to need a second node. Let's just see how well. Let's just see how well that cuts together. Okay, that's getting there, but it needs a little bit of extra red just to get the color right. Okay, that's all right. So now we're going to have to keyframe this. And we're going to have to go to this point here so that when we whip around, probably about here, it's going to have to be quite a fast fade down. We will go to our key control and we'll turn our key output off. So now what's going to happen is it's on here, and then as we whip, it's going to keyframe off. We don't really see the change, but then that looks fine. And then when we go back, we're going to have to keyframe on. So we'll add a dynamic, and we'll do another dynamic here, and then we'll put key output 1, and it will come back. And again, we don't really see it change, but then everything is properly exposed again. And that's fine. She is better lit than the other shot, but we'll just bring down the mids and the shadows a bit, just to kind of sell that nighttime look. And then we're just going to keep our shadows under control. Okay, excellent. And this all comes together quite well. So for first pass, I think that's fine. Might come back with a bit of noise reduction in these shots, but I'll do that in second pass. And then we go back to this shot, and we've already got that taken care of. So we'll just put that here. We get that really nice Brun Broen kind of thriller style look, and we can just plonk that on there, and that's fine. This was shot at the same time as the other shot. It was just a different take for a different part of the script. So it's easy enough to copy paste it across. And then we're going to deal with the woods later on. Right, so this is coming along quite nicely. Also, it helps that it's ARRI, and it works really nicely as well. It responds to the grade, responds to keying really nicely. So the next thing we are going to do is take care of this kitchen scene. It can be a little bit awkward. There's a lot of bloom, there's some backlighting, and yeah, the kind of the pink cast doesn't help us here because it blends the white background into the skin quite a lot. So we've got some work to do here, but we can work at it. So the toast is going to be dead easy. I'm going to instead go for this shot, which I feel gives us the best feel of the overall scene. The mother's there, the main lead is there, and then throughout we're focusing on either one or two of those subjects. So I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to start here where we get the best view of all the relevant stuff. So we'll start with our primaries as per usual. We'll just get our shadows sorted. Now, our basic problem here is that the wall and the skin is pretty much the same colour, and that's down to kind of bloomy lighting and some not ideal white balance, so we'll see what we can do. Because this light in the background was clipped, if we adjust our highlight detail, it's going to change colour because it started out at pure white, and this is one of the problems with clipping stuff and overexposing stuff with a colour cast. And I think I've mentioned this before, but we'll just reiterate just in case. And that's when you overexpose something, it's pure white always. But if you overexpose with a colour cast, because it started at pure white, if you colour correct your highlights, that pure white highlight's going to go a weird colour. It's going to go green, it's going to go purple, it's going to go orange, it's going to go blue. Because it was already pure white when everything else was incorrect. So when you correct for that, you can find that you actually have pure white highlights going a bit odd. That's very easy to fix with a LUMV sat curve. And that's the most practical way of doing that I've found. You can also use the log wheels as well. You can set your high range very high and just correct those highlights. So it's quite simple to deal with, although when beginners see that, it can be a bit, oh, why is my sky now high-vis yellow? But that's why. It's because it was white, and if you correct for a blue cast, it's going to go yellow because it started as white. You add yellow to correct blue, therefore what was white then goes yellow. Anyway, back to the project at hand. We're going to see how far we get here. We want to try and generally keep the same morose tone throughout. The whole thing's got to have quite a specific tone. And we've got a lot of magenta here, which is typical for this project. Then we might just restore a little bit of blue to our highlights, and then we're going to set the saturation up as well. Okay, so this is getting there. It's still not ideal. Now, I doubt, in fact we'll just test this out, I doubt we're going to get a decent key on the skin because the wall is identical to the skin in this one.